Hi everyone, hope you're doing okay. We had finished off last class in this question here when we were talking about trying to find the mean, median, and mode, but when we had grouped data. And so this was one example. Remember, you're almost always going to use your graphing calculator to figure this out. So don't get too worried about the details of that stuff. It is useful to understand, but you almost always will use your calculator anyway. So there's one other situation that goes along with that scenario, and that's sometimes we have grouped data, but they're in larger intervals or what are called classes. So let's say you have a range, I don't know, if let's say we're talking about marks and you know that there's grades between 50 and 60, and there, I don't know, three people within that class between 50 and 60. You don't necessarily know the individual marks. And as a result, we have to you kind of make an approximation when we do these, and you'll see what I mean below. In order to do that, we use what's called the midpoint or the mid-interval value of each class. So all we can do is calculate an approximation of the true mean, median, and mode. We can't do better without knowing each individual value. If we did, we could figure them all out. But if we don't, and often data that you go out and get on the internet or whatever is already grouped into these intervals, so you can't necessarily get the individual ones. So it says estimate the mean for the following ages of bus drivers' data to the nearest year. So we've got the age within groupings and then the frequency. So our age here, if we fill in this form, and again, you're going to mostly do this on your calculator, but let's just try it by hand as well. So I've got my groupings here. Notice that none of these overlap, which is key. And, 46. This would be continuous data, right? Age is a continuous variable. And we got them grouped by the number in each. So I've got my frequency. I'm just going to copy over those numbers. We talked about last class, the cumulative frequency. You're going to see that again more, but if you wanted to figure out the cumulative frequency, you could. Remember, this would be 11 plus 14, which is 25. This would be 25 plus 32, which gives me, what's that one going to be? 57. And then you would continue on like that, 84, ... They don't ask for it here, so it's not a big deal. One thing you do need to know is the total frequency, so the number of data points. You would have to add up all of those frequency points, and you would get a total of 137. The reason we need this, if we're doing it by hand at least, is that this is our n value, the total number of data points. The key here is to remember that we have to use an approximation, and the best thing we can do is probably use the midpoint of each. Even though it's not going to be truly reflective of what we have, we're going to use it as a midpoint. So I look at my ages 21 to 25. You're always just going to take the two of those things, 21 plus 25 divided by 2, which gives you, in this case, 46 over 2, which is 23. Similarly here, this would be 26 plus 30 over 2, so the middle would be 28. So this one, you really don't need that process. You can kind of look and see where the middle lies, but if you don't know, you can always add them up and take the mean, and that works. So I go through these. So all quite similar. And then if you were to ask to fill this out, but unlikely, but you would take the frequency times the midpoint. So it's like you have 11 data points that are of 23. The next one, you would have 14 data points that are 28. So we want to take those and multiply them together each time. So let's just fill that in. And you would get answers, and if you want, you can always just copy these to save a bit of time. And then if I was to add all of those up, I get the total number as if I added each individual data point. So my mean, which remember is x bar, is equal to the sum of the frequency times each data point, and then all over the total number of data points, which is n. So I'm really taking that 5161 over 137. So if I do that, I get 37.7, 3 sig figs, and that's the mean age. If I wanted the median, so let's say I had a second part here, which is what's the median. And I'm going to show you how to do this on the calculator anyway, but let's just try this one. So remember, to find the rank of the median, you take the number of data points divided by 2, so that's 137. Number of data points plus 1 divided by 2. And we get, in this case, the 69th data point. So if I was to line these all up, which they're kind of already arranged that way, I would need to go to the 69th data point, which falls then in this category, which would be the 36 to the 40 age group. So by the time I'm at the end of the 35 age group, I'm at the 57th data point. So the next one I would be all the way to the 84th. So I know that this falls in, therefore, the interval 36 to 40 is the median. And you could answer that as the midpoint if you wanted to, as 38, or you could give it as the interval. Both are acceptable. Great, so if I try this on the calculator, I've already entered all these numbers in, but what you need to do in L1, you put in all your midpoints. So those are the values always of your data points. So that's as close as we can get is with the midpoint. And then I put the frequency in L2. So I have them all typed in. And then remember, you're going to go to stat and then calc, 1var stats. And you just have to remember in frequency list, you go second function L2, which is L2, and then you just go to your calculate and press enter, and all that information is there. So we get the same answer. You have 37.7. The median, where though 38, yeah, they gave it as the midpoint because that's what we entered. Then there's a whole bunch of other stuff in there that we're going to learn about. Okay, so hopefully that's relatively straightforward. You can try these questions, not a lot to do in a shortened period. You can try this out, and then next class we'll move on from looking at the centers of data and look at the distribution of the data. Okay, take care.